Welcome to Redefining Medicine, an intimate and personalized program that illustrates a different side of the practice of medicine. Our in-depth conversations will focus on mentors and motivators who are consistently reshaping, redefining, and rediscovering the field of medical healthcare. I am excited to welcome human performance consultant, biohacker, and immersive journalist, Ben Greenfield. Welcome to Redefining Medicine. I am so excited for this interview. We have Ben Greenfield here to join us, who is a human performance consultant, biohacker, immersive journalist. So thank you so much.
Let's just make up words. Those all sound good to me.
Okay,
you sound
you'll
smart.
add it to your bio. So from what I understand, you're very smart. So thank you so much for making the time.
You put me on the spot. I should have had more nootropics out on the expo floor, I guess. Yeah.
I'm going to follow you there afterwards.
Yeah.
So you've seemingly lived, 20 lifetimes with as much as you've accomplished in your short time on this planet.
Well, I'm a believer in productivity, but I'm also kind of an idiot savant, meaning don't ask me anything about pop culture or the blockchain or just about anything other than health and fitness, and we're good.
Shoot, I might have to take a few cards
Yeah,
out.
you may have to remove some of your questions, but yeah, I've lived this whole health, fitness, longevity. How do you make the human body and the human brain better? Literally since I was a teenager. I haven't ever really had a different career or a different job, so I think it makes it maybe look like I've been doing this longer than I have. It's just that I'm kind of myopic, and this is just all I've ever done and loved. So.
Okay, so let's rewind to when you were little Ben.
Little Ben.
Okay, so you...
Oh, actually, little Ben, we might actually get into some stuff that when I was in health and fitness, depending on how
go back to
how little Ben you want to go.
Go little Ben.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I was homeschooled growing up, so I was kind of a geek.
Why did your parents choose to homeschool you?
Well, my mom is from Detroit and my dad is from Miami, and they both had pretty rough lives with they weren't horrible people, but they did get involved with things like, drugs and a little bit of crime, and I mean they weren't like, killing people and burying their bodies, but
the pictures aren't in a post office.
Yeah, but they just they didn't really like that fast-paced, stressful, very very hedonistic existence, and they both wound up moving to North Idaho to live more naturally and getting married in North Idaho, and they started a family. So homeschooling was kind of like their way to allow them to kind of expose us to a lot more natural living type of concepts and live a little bit healthier existence to a certain extent, even though they weren't really super duper dialed in nutritionally, but they just wanted to take really good care of us kids, and they thought that homeschooling was a good way to do it. And so I grew up in that environment. I was the second born. Grew up in that environment, and perhaps as a result of being homeschooled, perhaps as a result of just my natural tendencies, because I love to learn and I love to teach, and I like things that are a little bit complex mentally, and so I played a lot of chess, and I designed video games, and I played violin for 13 years, and I wrote fantasy fiction, and would just spend copious numbers of hours in my room reading J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis and Arthur Conan Doyle, and that was pretty much the way that I lived until I was about 13 years old, when I discovered
Did you have friends?
Tennis. No, complete social outcast. No, I'm just kidding. It wasn't that bad. Now I make my parents sound bad. No, I had friends. I had a lot of group activities that I'd go to. My parents built this wonderful home out in the countryside with a pool and like tennis courts. So we'd always have friends over playing. We had a lot of friends. We had a really, the way homeschooling was then, it's even more so now. There are a lot of groups, co-ops, and people come together and learn,
but it wasn't
and the kids hang out together.
An online community back then, like it is
today.
today.
Well, you know what? It's funny you should say that, because of course we're early adopters of a lot of technology. My parents are just the new Dell computer came out and they'd buy it for us because they wanted us to really have this thriving learning environment. But of course we had the 288K modem, and as soon as we got that bad boy, the whole and you dial up to get on the internet.
Right.
But I remember they wanted me to try internet school, and they actually found a couple of tutors. I remember we did a lot of classical studies, right? I did a lot of logic and Latin and the great books, and they used this program, really old school program, I don't know if it exists anymore, called See You, See Me. And it was like one of the first online learning programs. And I actually took some online classes like way back in the day. You know, we're talking more than a couple decades ago, almost like 3 decades ago. And I remember like you'd actually have class like maybe 1 out of every 10 times that you'd log in, and the rest of the time something was broken or the speed wasn't fast enough. So I spent a lot of time like trying to get into Latin class being canceled, me pumping my fist and going outside to, you know, play in the woods. So we did try the online schooling thing though, to a certain extent. However, tennis is what really got me into the whole physical culture scene. Right, like my parents, like I mentioned, they built a tennis court. I wanted to learn tennis. I wanted to get involved in more sports, and so, you know, my dad took me to the sporting goods store down in Lewiston, Idaho, and bought me a pair of 10-pound dumbbells that I didn't know what to do with them. I'd like lay on the edge of my bed and do
how
curls.
old at this
I was 13, okay. And I would run up the hills back behind the house, and I started kind of sort of, even though we grew up on iceberg lettuce and pizza and hamburgers, you know, I kind of sort of think a little bit more about how to fuel the body, you know, and I would buy like protein bars and protein shakes and, you know, just very, very rudimentary, elementary stuff. But that's what got me interested in fitness and physical culture to a certain extent. And then I took a deep dive. Like by the time I was 15, I launched my own like tennis coaching business. I would coach kids from around the neighborhood to save up for college. And I met mentors, like my little brother's best friend's dad was a bodybuilder, and he taught me a bunch about like bodybuilding and eating and therapy and deep tissue work. And then one of my dad's friends was the state powerlifting champ, so he taught me how to use a barbell and how to throw weights around. And I eventually decided I did not want to be, this is what I originally wanted to be, a computer programmer to make video games, and I instead wanted to go and study this stuff in college. So I wound up getting invited to come play for the tennis team at the college, and this was at Lewis Clark State University, and I eventually transferred up to University of Idaho, but I declared myself a kinesiology major, and I started studying exercise physiology and biomechanics, and wound up getting a master's degree in that, and I've been hardcore in the fitness and health industry ever since.
So you opted to go that route in lieu of medical school or whatnot?
Yeah, well, I actually went full pre-med. I took the MCATs. I got accepted to 6 medical schools. However, what I really wanted to do, maybe I was a little bit narcissistic or hubristic, but I really wanted to study as an MD PhD. And so there were 2 universities I was looking at, UPenn and Duke, for their MD PhD programs. And I didn't get accepted to either of those, but I thought, well, maybe I'll
look at you now.
Maybe I'll go work in the private sector for a little while and see if I can make myself more palatable, you know, as an applicant to those. And so I actually wound up out of college once I graduated with my exercise phys and biomechanics degree, getting a job in hip and knee surgical sales for Biomet. And I thought, like, I'll go work in medicine and kind of work in the private sector, make some money, and kind of like turn myself into an even better candidate for medical school. And I got like 4 months into that job and just got totally disillusioned with the modern medical industry. Like, all the doctors were unhappy, and all of them told me it'd be crazy to go to medical school, and they had nice cars and boats and houses, but seemed like they didn't have any time to enjoy that stuff. And I know I'm painting with a broad brush, right? Like, there are a lot of happy doctors out there, but I just, like, after spending time in hospitals for hours every day, watching sick and unhealthy people get overpressed implants put into their bodies when they probably could have done a lot better with holistic medical advice that involved nutrition and fitness and lifestyle and all the stuff I'd kind of been really steeped in up to that point, they would have done a lot better. And so I think it was 5 months in, I just like pulled the plug, I quit that job, I walked into the gym across the street from the apartment I was staying in. And at that point, I had a good resume. Like, I was a personal trainer, and I had a master's degree, and I had a nutrition certification. And I looked good on paper, and I got a job as a fitness manager at the gym, and just kind of launched back hardcore and into the fitness scene. So. Okay,
so fast forward. How did this whole business develop? You're a highly paid performance consultant. You have this, incredible amount of followers on, in social media. You have, I don't even know how many subscribers you have, to your site.
I don't know either. So
I know, but you've built quite a following, and people are reaching out to you for help on how to, biohack their body, so to speak. So how did that all start?
Well, I worked as a personal trainer for a few years at this facility.
There's a lot of
And
personal
then-
trainers out there that haven't
Yeah,
reached your level of success.
I know, but I was
so-
still like a geek, so I was really
Okay.
prolific, and I would like
Right.
write newsletters for the gym, and I had a lot of people start following me, and I even started like just for the local, gym, like kind of my own little mini email list back then, and I started to dabble because I had the background in computer programming, right? So whenever I'd write a newsletter for the gym, I had a website, and I would put it up on the website, and people would subscribe to the newsletter. Like this was way back early in the days, where you were just coding your own HTML scripts and figuring out how to collect email addresses. And so I was kind of sort of just like starting a baby online career at the same time I was trying to make a name for myself as a personal trainer. And then I partnered up with a sports medicine physician named PZ Pierce up in Spokane. He's like the doc for Ironman Triathlon and the Rock and Roll Marathon. And I was training his wife, and he approached me and said, "Hey, look, let's start like a really cool facility, like a one-stop shop for sports medicine." And he wanted me to be the director of human performance, and he'd do the medical side. So we launched this amazing facility with chiropractors and physical therapists and personal trainers, but we really geeked it out. Like this was not your standard personal training studio. There were like high-speed video cameras for biomechanical and gait analysis, and calorimetry equipment to calculate your resting metabolic rate or your exercise metabolic rate, carbs burnt, fat burnt. We had
And who was the typical client?
Actually a lot of active exercise enthusiasts, a lot of endurance athletes like triathletes and marathoners, a lot of people who just wanted to go from good to great, which is actually largely most of the people I work with now. But then also because we were technically a medical facility with a medical staff, a lot of times doctors were sending their patients to us. The federal government has this thing called the Exercise is Medicine Initiative, and I would use a lot of the materials that they published on their website to reach out to the local medical community. So when docs had patients who maybe had a hip replacement or who were dealing with obesity or overweight, who needed to learn how to live healthy, they would send their patients to us because we weren't just like this rogue personal trainer, meathead, with dumbbells and a brick gym. We were like a really good, pristine, clean medical facility, and we had all the equipment. And I think we were ahead of our time to a certain extent.
You were bringing in pretty esoteric modalities
Oh yeah,
too.
I mean,
that
like,
most people...
I would just buy stuff. Like I bought one of the first like PRP centrifuge machines, like 20 years ago, and we were injecting joints, and we weren't doing stem cells or anything like that back then, but we were doing a lot of kind of cutting edge procedures. We had EKG and cardiac stress equipment, and so it was a very safe, clean, functional, kind of slick place to train. And some physicians in the local community voted me or nominated me to be America's top personal trainer. Right? So there's like this certification as America's top personal trainer, and I received that honor. And at that point, that really kind of thrust me into the limelight. Like I started traveling to all these health and fitness events and speaking on stage, and I was making good money at the time. I was making like six figures as a young personal trainer, just working with folks because it costs more money to train in a facility like that. But I was also working my ass off, and living a very hectic lifestyle. And my wife was pregnant with our twin boys at the time. And
How old were you at the time?
At that point, I was about 25, I think. So
Young dad.
Yeah, or expecting dad. And so I'm traveling all over the country now, giving talks at health and fitness expos, and the online thing was continuing to snowball. Like every time I go and speak at an event, I'd have more people signing up for my newsletter, and I wrote a little ebook and would sell the ebook, and I even printed the book and drove it around to GNCs and gyms and health clubs in the local area, and then launched a second facility in a more naturopathic medical setting, and just a lot going on. And with as much attention as I was getting at that time, I decided I needed to figure out what path I wanted to start on, because I couldn't see myself running a brick and mortar series of gyms, then also doing like the online, the speaking. I had started a podcast, right? Like I started one of the first health podcasts on iTunes. So I had this podcast I was doing now where I would just like sit there and read research journals and all the things I was discovering each week and publish it.
Who were you interviewing?
Oh, I would interview like athlete friends. I mean, my first probably 20 episodes was just me, right? Just me, like telling
Sharing
people about
your
research
knowledge.
journals. Yeah, because I just love, still do. I spend several hours each day just reading research, and I read a book a day, and like I'm adamant about collecting information. I read a book a day.
How do you read a book a day?
Very quickly.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
obviously.
growing up homeschooled, if there's one thing that I did a lot of, it was reading. Like I can read very quickly. My sons are the same way. They're not homeschooled, but we don't have video games or television or like, and when they're at home, they just read. So all of us Greenfield boys, we read very quickly.
So are you utilizing a specific technique to get through?
So for speed reading, the way that I do it is I get the book, I scan the table of contents, I scan the first chapter to see how the layout actually is so that I can expect what I'm going to read and how that author has actually laid out the book. And some authors do a really good job, like they'll put the summary at the beginning and they'll be boldface font. This is how I write my books, is like I want everything to be so that someone can just sail through each chapter if they need to. And then I have, I like paper books more than Kindle, but I do the Kindle and I'll just use my finger on the Kindle for highlighting, pencil or pen when I'm reading the real book. And I just go from page to page and I'll always circle stuff because a lot of times I'm reading books to interview the author on my podcast. One of the coolest parts about my job, right? You get to read amazing books and then you get to think the whole time that you're reading the book, dude, I get to interview this person, ask them all the questions that I have from reading the book. Like it's like a pinch me, I'm dreaming job, that part of things. So anyways, and then I have this rule when I'm reading the book that I'm not allowed, this is just a silly rule I made up for myself, I'm not allowed to turn the page back or flip the Kindle back. So I have to read while I'm very aware that I need to be not just staring at the page, kind of letting, subconsciously, tuning out, but I need to consciously read. And so I do that. I go forward in each book. And then the other thing that I find with books, and as an author I understand this, is you get about halfway through many books and they start to kind of get a little bit less dense in terms of the information and the practicality and the helpfulness and the usefulness. As an author, I know what that is. Like you'll get a contract with a publisher and they'll say, well, write, 100,000 words, and you get like 60,000 words in, and you're like, well, what the hell do I say now? And you just find some extra filler material to put in the book. Like that's the temptation for an author. I don't do that. My books are good, don't worry. But so a lot of times, like I'm aware, like if I get halfway through a book, like I'll start reading a lot more quickly. So I'm like, oh, this chapter is kind of irrelevant, or this is very—
Move on.
Yeah, just move on.
So you're not necessarily reading cover to cover.
Right, I go through each page, but there are, if I'm reading a 10 chapter book, there's like sometimes 6 of the chapters get read in detail, and then 4 it's just like, okay, skim over this and see if there's anything useful from it. There's no rule that you have to actually read every word. A lot of people think that.
And you've taught your sons to read the same way?
I haven't taught them to read the same way. I pretty much did exactly with them what happened to me when I was a kid, which was you just read a lot of books. And the rule in the Greenfield house is if you want a new Lego or a Nerf gun or anything like that, well, you save up your money. And my kids have a little food podcast, and they'll rent out their room on Airbnb, and they have little ways they make money. But you need to buy you need to buy that stuff yourself.
Right.
But in our house, unless it's like Captain Underpants or Diary of a Wimpy Kid, I will buy them any book they want, hands down, no questions asked. So there's a constant flow of books coming into our house. And that's part of it too. When you have a stack of books waiting for you, like you're always kind of reading it and thinking of the next one. So I don't teach them speed read, I just give them lots of books and let them read them and eliminate a lot of the things that would otherwise distract them from reading books, like smartphones and video games and televisions and things like that. So I had this podcast going, and I kind of had this online thing going, and the gym's going. And at one point, I remember I was sitting at a health and fitness conference, and I was listening to a guy who was like into e-commerce and affiliate marketing, and he was writing information products online. He was doing really well doing this. It was actually a guy named Vince Del Monte. I still know him. He marketed himself as the skinny guy's savior, and he would write like ebooks for skinny guys to put on muscle. And I was looking at him and his revenue and what he was doing from a business standpoint, and I thought, I could do that. And he's sitting at home, and I remember my wife was with me at that conference, and I've got like this yellow legal notepad, and I'm looking at her, and I'm like, I could be at home with our kids, we could homeschool our kids, I could just do what I'm doing right now, but just put all this information down digitally and sell it to people online. And I'd never heard of this affiliate thing before, but I could pay other people who have lists to actually market this for me, and it's a win-win. And then I add more emails to my list, and so I thought, okay, I'm just gonna jump in, and I'm gonna do this full on. So I didn't get rid of my gyms, but I just started, I'd get home at 9 p.m. from the gym, and I'd work till 2 a.m., like writing out, in this case it was a triathlon training program, because I was competing in Ironman Triathlons a lot of the time. And I thought, okay, I want to teach people how to do what I do, how to do Ironman Triathlons, but get super efficient training in, minimal effective dose of exercise, still have time for your family, for your social life, for your hobbies, for your career. I thought there's got to be at least like 1,000 like hard charging type A CEOs out there who want to do an Ironman but want to do it well and want to still have time left over for everything else. Because the divorce rate in triathlons, like, I don't know if this is true, it's like 70-something%. It's crazy because, people don't have time when they do these things. So that's what I did. I spent like 6 months designing this program. It's like, here's the workouts that you do every day, and I made videos for the swimming techniques and like little audios that you could listen to go along with it. And I launched that during, they had the Ironman Hawaii. And so I thought, okay, I'm gonna launch this when everybody's like online searching for triathlon and it's top of mind. So I did, and I hired my first virtual assistant in the Philippines who helped me put together a list of all the different triathlon clubs and the triathlon coaches in the US. And then
Brilliant.
I wrote a templated email that she could send out to them to make them affiliates for this program, right? So they can make 50% on all the sales that they did. And then I told everybody, okay, this week of Ironman, we're just gonna launch it. Tell all the people in your club, tell your list. So in that week, I made about $50,000 in selling this program. And I was like, well, that wasn't like rocket science.
Right.
I could do this for muscle building. I could do this for fat loss. I could do another triathlon. I could do a marathon program. So at that point, I moved all my clients onto other trainers. I got rid of my equipment. I moved on from the gyms. I moved into the house and got a really good computer and started like not getting dressed in the morning and instead just getting up and working from home. And still kept podcasting, still kept speaking, which I do now. Didn't completely quit coaching and still do what I do now. Like I have 10 really like high-end CEOs and pro athletes who I work with. And so I still coach some people online. Like I write out their meals for them and their workouts and, track their sleep and their HRV and just kind of like, I'm like the CEO of their health. So I still do a little bit of that. And I mean, for the past 10 years, that's what I've been doing. It's kind of a mix of new media and speaking and authoring, right, writing books. But that was kind of like how that happened, in terms of me kind of going from personal trainer to more like, kind of, I don't know what I do now, but if I'm sitting next to somebody on an airplane, I just tell them I'm an author, because like the little old lady sitting next to me on the airplane can understand that. But yeah, and I still think like if you could strip everything away from me and just tell me do one thing that's going to make you happy, besides spending time with my family and, in nature and, working out and exercising, it would be writing. Like that's hardcore what I really, really love to do. I love to read, I love to write, I love to find information and then disseminate that, package it, and put it into terms that people can understand, that makes their lives better. And that's what I love to do.
There's 5,000 physicians here at the A4M World Congress. How is your message different to the medical community, or is it?
Well, I can use bigger words. And people can understand them.
They might not understand.
Yeah, I mean, it actually is. I mean, like I'm not totally joking. Like when you're talking to physicians, and you're in an environment like this versus a lay person,
they want the science.
I like it because you can take a deeper dive. Like I gave my what I call my penis talk yesterday. Where they want me to come in and talk about biohacking male sexuality, and I almost rarely, if ever, give the same talk twice. So I hadn't given this talk before, but I thought, okay, well, what are docs not learning right now when it comes to improving male libido and testosterone and sexual performance? Because you go out on the expo floor and they're learning, up and down about peptides and stem cells and supplements, and I wanted to focus on basic nutrients, carb, fat, protein ratios, exercise strategies, lifestyle strategies. And so I try and think to a certain extent about, it's kind of like physicians don't get a lot of nutrition in medical school, right?
They don't get any nutrition.
Or a lot of exercise coaching, unless they go out and take that as an elective. So I try to focus on some things that I think they're probably not going to be discovering anyways, with the reps that arrive at the office or at other expos or events. And then I can use bigger words, I can take a deeper dive into the studies, but it's not that much different, really.
But what scientific evidence are you providing to them?
Well,
that's different from, than the peptides and the bioidentical hormones and whatnot.
Well, yeah, I'll give you an example. Okay. Like we know that, for example, and most of this research is just stuff you could dig up on PubMed, for example. And most of the journals I get are like strength conditioning journal or journals about exercise physiology or, research summaries in kind of like the exercise, fitness, nutrition realm. even though I'm getting very, very into longevity and anti-aging now as well. And so I'll present a study, like some of the things I talked about yesterday was the fact that the sweet spot for high intensity interval training to enhance testosterone in males is about a 6-second exercise burst with a 1 to 5 to a 1 to 10 work to rest ratio, right? So if you're advising a man who wants to increase testosterone to improve his cardiovascular health as well, he should be doing that by hopping on a bike and doing a quick warm up, 6 seconds as hard as he can freaking go, and then a good 60 seconds or more off, like recovery, completely active, and then you do it again. You do like 5 to 10 bursts of that. Or for example, where are the highest number of androgen receptors located? They're located in the legs. And not only does training your legs turn out to increase testosterone and growth hormone, but high intensity DC current electrical muscle stimulation for the legs has been shown to cause a significant hormonal response. And so especially in a population who may not be able to exercise, who is immobile, people who want to hack their physiology and try some cool technique to actually increase not only muscle mass or muscle size but also hormone status, you can get like an electrical muscle stimulation machine, use that on your legs. Like these are the kind of things that I don't necessarily think a doctor is going to learn in medical school or some other events, but those are just a couple examples of the type of things I would teach or talked about yesterday.
So what's your typical day like? And what
depends whether I'm on an airplane or at a hotel.
Right.
I mean, I am a big fan of routines, so I can tell you the stuff that's non-negotiable, whether I'm at home or whether I'm traveling.
And what lifestyle things and what modalities are you doing every day to keep yourself?
Yeah, and the two would cross over to a certain extent. Every single morning, very first thing I do is I roll over and I gratitude journal. So I'm always reading a spiritual book or a devotional or the Bible. So I'm always going through something like that for 5 to 10 minutes, and it varies. Right now I'm reading just this tiny little devotional. It's easy to travel with, called Our Daily Bread, and I'll read a little inspirational passage from that. And then I do gratitude journaling. I write down one thing I'm grateful for, and one person who I can pray for, or who I can help, or who I can serve that day, so I can start my day in a very empathetic, others-facing type of thought pattern. And then what truth I discovered in that morning's reading, so that I'm not just like digging the eye boogers out of my corner of my eye and not focusing again when I'm reading, but reading consciously, knowing that I'm going to answer a question after I read. So I start off every day like that, whether I'm traveling or whether I'm at home. Every day, whether I'm traveling or I'm at home, as soon as I get out of bed, it's 15 minutes of just selfish time taking care of my body. Foam rollers or lacrosse balls or exercise massage devices or breath work. Sometimes it's my chance to try some new move I've seen to open up the diaphragm or some new breathing patterns. But I have those 15 minutes, right? It just kind of gives me momentum going into the day.
And how much sleep do you get at night?
I sleep about 8 hours a night. I actually slept 9 hours last night, which in Vegas is pretty good.
Yeah, it is very
I'm happy
good.
about that for Vegas. But I was also in bed at 9:30 reading Harry Potter, and my boys have convinced me to read all 7 of them, and they've given me an incentive, or they've told me I need to read all 7 by
the time you get home.
Well, the thing is, the fiction book, I don't read a
Right.
book a day for fiction.
Okay.
Like fiction, I like to just like digest it and
Right.
enjoy it, and not feel like I got to flip, because then you can't keep the characters straight and everything. So the fiction I read more slowly. But I'll sleep 8 hours a night or so. I always take a nap, whether I'm traveling or at home, always take a nap in the afternoon. Start off the day with the gratitude journaling, the meditation, and some kind of work for the body. Always have some kind of like a super beverage after that, coffee or mushroom tea. I intermittent fast, so I don't put a lot of calories or oils or fats or butters or things like that in there, just a black cup of coffee or green tea or cacao tea or anything along those lines. And then after that, I have my half hour of exercise. And I'm a big believer in doing something in the morning that's restorative and that's energizing for the body, not that's draining. So it's very rarely for me like a hard CrossFit WOD or something like that in the morning. It's like a walk in the sunshine or an easy swim or a little bit of yoga. I like to save anything hard for later on in the day, which is when your body temp peaks and your grip strength peaks and your post-workout protein synthesis peaks. It's best to do like easy stuff in the morning, harder stuff later on in the day. So I have that, and then about that time, I always finish with cold shower, jumping in a cold river, lake, ice, whatever. So I always have fasting and then exercise, and then cold. Like that's what I do 365 days a year.
Whether you're traveling or home.
Whether I'm traveling or home, because I can do that
Right.
when I'm traveling. I can always find something cold. I can always find somewhere to move. I can always find coffee or
You
tea
jump
or
in the
something.
fountain outside?
Yeah, no, I just take a cold shower here. You have a great spot here though with really good cold showers too. And then after that I start work. And there's a great book called Deep Work by Cal Newport, and it kind of dictates that the human body can handle about 4 to 5 hours of deep focused work each day. So typically, and sometimes when I'm traveling at an event like an expo, I'm not doing deep work. Like my deep work is roaming the expo floor and talking with people, and I know I can handle about 4 hours of that before I'm just fizzled, or 4 hours of writing, or 4 hours of podcasting, or 4 hours of consulting, or whatever I happen to be doing that day that's on that day's schedule. Typically I find my most productive time is about the time I've finished up that little cold soak. I have a little bit of breakfast. Typically I'll just do a quick smoothie, or I'll have another cup of coffee or tea, but this time I'll blend some things in it, and so typically something liquid or quick for breakfast. And then I just work my ass off for 4 to 5 hours. I'm like a horse with blinders. I take little Pomodoro breaks as I work, stop to swing some kettlebells or do some pull-ups or something like that. And so I always have time couched in for deep work each day, because I'm a big fan of creating more than you consume.
Is this 7 days a week?
This is, well, I don't work much on Sundays. Sundays is an easier day, but yeah, Saturdays I'm doing this, so at least 6 days of the week. And then I typically have some kind of a salad for breakfast or for lunch. Always the afternoon nap, always some kind of evening routine to wind down. 20 to 45 minutes. And when I'm traveling, it's more difficult. I'll play like binaural beats or sleep tunes, or wear like a light sound therapy device, or something to really settle the body down, or use some PEMF on the occipital bone on the back of the head to kind of get you into delta brainwave production. When I'm at home though, I've got like a big biomat, and I've got like my Normatec recovery boots, and it's like this little sleep palace that I slip up into in the afternoon.
Talk about boys and their toys.
Yeah, and like a lavender essential oil diffuser, just everything. And then I wake up, and typically I save all my reactive work, emails, things like that for the afternoon when I'm kind of done with productivity and creativity. If I'm at home, at that point I'm hanging out with my kids, working out, shooting bows out in the forest, meditating, plant foraging. And we live kind of off-grid in Washington State with goats and chickens, and we grow most of our own food, or I hunt most of our meat, and so we live pretty naturally out there. And then the afternoon, evening rolls around. Whenever I'm at home, we always have a big family dinner at the end of the day, and we share our gratitude journals, and we play table topics, and we gather as a family and just have an amazing time together. And I play the kids some guitar or some ukulele, and we have some sing-alongs, and we say some prayers and go to bed and start an amazing day the next day. So,
what an extraordinary way to live your life.
Yeah.
And to raise a family.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So speaking of diet, I know you said you intermittent fast, but is there anything that you won't put into your body? Do you restrict gluten? Do you restrict dairy or anything like that?
No, I'm not myopic when it comes to diet. Unless you have a clinical diagnosis of celiac, or you have really serious like leaky gut syndrome, and you need to eat a relatively restricted diet until you've healed that and gotten past that, and then you could. Even the carnivore diet, it's technically just a food elimination diet, right? And eventually you should be able to return to legumes or the beans, rice, grains, etc. If you could paint me into one dietary corner, I'd say I'm very kind of like the Weston A. Price diet, right? Eat everything, every good food that grows on the face of the planet in moderation, mostly plants. Have sometimes when you feast, sometimes when you fast. Soak, sprout, ferment, use a lot of ancestral preparation techniques. So you can eat grains and legumes and dairy, but in a manner that's been pre-digested, or that's been fermented or soaked. Things that reduce lectins or gluten density, or that allow the plant's natural enzymes, or the enzymes of the medium that you're soaking it in, to allow it to act on the food. So yeah, we eat dairy, we eat grains, we eat rices, we eat legumes, we eat plants, we eat any meat that's organic or grass-fed or grass-finished. But my philosophy is, as long as it's prepared properly and from a really good source, I will eat anything. Yeah.
What about alcohol?
I drink. I am a believer in feast-famine cycles.
Okay.
So there are periods of time. I do a liver cleanse 4 times a year, where I'll just eat khichdi and celery juice and a little bit of coconut yogurt, and do like a coffee enema every other day, and have some Epsom salts. And it's just wonderful for the liver and the
over a
gallbladder.
how many day period?
Wonderful flush. It's 5 days.
Okay.
But aside from those periods of time, I drink every day. I have a glass of wine or something with good bitters and digestifs in it, like a Moscow Mule, or I'll go out on the land and I'll pick some wild mint and put that in with a nice cucumber vodka on ice. So I have a drink every day, and rarely will I have more than one drink. I haven't been drunk in 6 years, but I'm a big believer in the de-stressing and some of the antioxidants and the bitters and the digestive benefits of a good, healthy serving of alcohol once a day. We know a lot of the blue zones do this, and yeah, there's all the confounding variable as well. You're maybe hanging out with people at the end of the day, having your drink, and it's de-stressing you, and maybe there's other flavanols and polyphenols in there that even separate from the alcohol could be healthy. Whatever. I feel way better in that than when I was in college, where you don't drink at all Monday through Friday. It's like, dude, and then the weekend rolls around, you're like, here we go, baby. So I drink every day, and I think it actually keeps me from drinking more or consuming alcohol in excess. So yeah, I have one favorite drink that I order at bars. I had this last night actually here at a bar in Vegas. I go to the bartender and tell him I want a Ben and Jitters, which I also like because it's got my name in it. And it's just a shot of really good, clean gin. Maybe you get some Bombay Sapphire or something like that. Some kind of that makes it so you don't drink it too quickly because it's kind of bitter. And then that's served on the rocks with a selection of any of the house bitters that the bar wants to put in there. So it lowers your first phase insulin response. It helps you to digest food. It's got a bile and a liver effect on your gallbladder and your liver. And so the Ben and Jitters is what I'll order these days when I'm at a bar.
I'll have to remember that.
Yeah, there you go.
So let's talk about your company, Kion. This is the company you founded?
I did found Kion. I was doing like the Ben Greenfield thing, bengreenfieldfitness.com, and I even had like supplements I was producing called Greenfield Naturals. And I thought, well, gosh, if I get hit by a bus, that's not good. To have an entire company built with my name. And also, like, I don't necessarily want the pressure my entire life of having to be like the pro athlete out running through the forest with my shirt off, throwing spears at hay bales, and like maybe I want to actually, I have a lot of interests. I want to finish a 5-part fiction series by the time I'm 50. I want to publish an album around the same time in the music industry. There's a lot of things I want to do, and if my entire company is built around me and my face and my name and my identity, I'm kind of tied to that versus creating something bigger than me that still allows me to kind of have a playground for new formulations, new supplements. I'm all over the world. At this conference alone, in the past few hours, I discovered 3 novel molecules that has me full of ideas for things I can put into supplement formulations, particularly in this case for joint, for immune, and for longevity. I'm trying to hit a lot of these hot spots with the supplements that we create to really go after the big pain points for people. And we also work with physicians, we work with chiropractic docs, we work with personal trainers, nutritionists, and I have a mentorship program where I train them. How do you run your businesses? How do you make more money? How do you market? How do you start a podcast? Whatever it is that folks want to do. And then we also do books. I have a gratitude journal, and I have a book on training, another book I'm releasing soon on longevity, but it's all under the brand of Kion, which is derived from ki. I have a tattoo on my shoulder that I got when I was 18 based on the Japanese concept of ki. It's the kanji symbol for ki, the life force, the prana, the chakra, the energy, the invisible energy that flows through all of us. There are some people that even think that ki is literally your mitochondria. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted a company that was really built around this concept of giving people solutions that supported them for their body, for their mind, and then even for their spirit. I'm working on some really cool ideas to allow people to fast more easily, to focus more easily, to the point where we can literally have supplements that help people out with the meditation and gratitude and fasting and a lot of these spiritual disciplines. And so, yeah, it's a ton of fun. I get to find amazing ingredients, and I built this amazing team around me that helps out with customer service and customer support. So I just get to kind of research stuff and say, hey, here's what we should make to help people out. So. And
what's differentiating Kion from some of the other companies out there?
We huge focus on quality, big focus on combining ancestral wisdom and modern science, meaning taking molecules that we know from an ancestral standpoint have been used for a long time, like like turmeric or white willow bark, but then combining them with more novel molecules like, cetyl myristoyate or newer compounds that, in this case that would be for joints. And so kind of combining a lot of the ancestral stuff, the time-honored wisdom with the modern science, and creating new supplements based around that. And then we have a really good coffee. Like I love coffee. My dad was a coffee roaster growing up, so we have this really pure antioxidant-rich coffee, and we tested against dozens and dozens of other coffees, and it's really clean. You have like all the superfoods I sprinkle on top of my smoothie in the morning, like cacao nibs and coconut flakes and
so you're manufacturing
almonds and all this stuff. Like I made an energy bar. That's all of that. So, and I actually keep the energy bar in the freezer, and I sprinkle it on top of Halo Top ice cream. It's amazing. And so we have like a clean energy bar and a coffee and all sorts of stuff.
So what does success look like for you?
Success, it always changes. Like success for me is, honestly, my purpose in life. I think everybody should be able to name their purpose in one single succinct statement, because that's the Japanese call it your ikigai, your why, your reason for getting out of bed in the morning. For me, it's I want to empower people to live an adventurous and joyful and fulfilling life. And so for me, success is not only living that life, but teaching other people how to live it. And on an even deeper level, there are bullet points like I really want to make sure that I use the skills or the talents I've been given and not just, kind of myopically focus on the health and fitness industry, but eventually, finish this fiction book. I published my first fiction book last year, and I'm halfway through my second now. And I'm really working hard on my singing, songwriting skills. And for me, that's part of success too, is just focusing on the things that maybe you were good at when you were a kid or that bring you happiness, that allow you to branch out in life. And then I want to raise 2 young human beings who will grow up to make this world a better place, who are hopefully stronger and more resilient and better people than I am. And so I want to do a really good job with my boys. And I want to, my wife and I keep this big book on our bedstand. There's lots of books on my side, but there's this one. It's Winston Churchill and his wife. I think it's Clementine is the name of his wife. It's not Clement. It starts with a C. I forget the name of his wife. But they have like this whole collection of love letters that they wrote to each other, because he was like this politician and she was an influencer all over the world. And but it's really inspiring because they had this amazing love life together and an amazing devotion to each other. And like I want to be the guy who's like holding hands with my wife, celebrating our 55th wedding anniversary, just having an amazing life together. And
how'd you meet your wife?
Well, I met her in 2nd grade in Sunday school, and she used to kick the back of my chair. But then she realized I was the geeky homeschooled guy, and all I wanted to do was go read The Hobbit. And so we met again though in college. We wound up in the same class together in college, and we wound up just being best friends for like 2 years. Then we kind of fell in love and we got married. But yeah, I want to explore their skills. I want to raise 2 amazing kids. I want to continue to inspire people. I want to continue an amazing love life with my wife, and grow old and die out in the forest in Washington State. Well, either when I'm 150 or maybe have a heart attack when I'm making love or something like that. But yeah, somewhere in there. Okay. Yeah, or maybe playing basketball when I'm 90. I don't know.
So you inspire so many people, and I personally have a 17-year-old son who is now getting totally into you. So, but who do you look up to for mentorship and inspiration?
I totally suck at that because I was homeschooled.
Right.
Like when you're homeschooled, like
I know, but
it's
whether
this weird
real
thing.
Or
but there are people that I respect, from history. Like I named Winston Churchill. Right. I like him as a leader and an orator, and like I competed in speech and debate in college, and I really value people who can speak and express themselves and communicate well. Theodore Roosevelt. I like his entire weaving of being a great leader with being a great, he was a hunter, he was a wonderful intellectual, he wrote amazing books, he was brave, he could fight, he was a boxer, he championed this whole idea of whatever you think of this, muscular Christianity, guys who are strong spiritually but then also strong physically. I find him very inspirational. I like guys like Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner at Berkshire Hathaway. I think he's a very good fountain of wisdom. And there are other up-and-coming guys who I pay attention to what they're doing as far as a lot of the things they're creating, like Ryan Holiday and Derek Sivers and James Clear, and really prolific authors who are actually creating work that I don't think is just fluff, but that's actual meaningful work that changes lives. But I never, ever, ever have had a mentor, like a true
Who do you call
mentor.
if you have an idea and you want to bounce it off of them?
Oh, see, that's the tricky part for me, is I'm such an independent lone wolf, and I think part of it was growing up being
for
homeschooled.
sure.
I actually don't have a huge network of people that I actually, call up when there are certain people, that I've reached out to, who are just like too busy to mentor me. Like there's this one guy, whenever I read his books, I'm just like fist pumping the whole time, and I love it, and it's inspirational. It makes me think about, changing people's souls and spirits rather than just their physical bodies. And he's like this pastor named John Ortberg, and I've reached out to him multiple times. His secretary always writes back, he's like, he's got a huge church, and he's
Ben
pastor. He's
again.
like, yeah, or there for me, I would say, if I want to give something helpful to the people who are watching this, I do like to find experts in their specific niches and consult them, and so there are certain people who I know are really good at, let's just pull something out of the hat, like dirty electricity, and what do you do when you're looking at all these different biohacks and figuring out whether they're going to be good for you or bad for you based on the electrical pollution they create. Is this new piece of science really good, or is it harmful for the human body? I call Dr. Mercola, right? Like Joe's my guy for that. Or if I have a deep question about finances and about protecting my wealth, or some new tax loophole or something like that, I call Garrett Gunderson, my financial manager. And so I do have people that I call in their respective categories, but I don't have like an old wise mentor who I turn to for everything. So
Do you go for an annual physical?
No, I do like a weekly physical, like
on yourself.
I just have so many tests.
Right.
I'm constantly running on myself. The Dutch panels and
Right.
Wellness FX panels, and and I'm always competing on these reality TV shows or big events where they want me to do physicals and EKGs and stress tests beforehand, and so I get a lot of physicals. I get a lot of checkups, or I'm doing checkups on myself. Yeah.
So other than your music career and your authoring, penning several other books coming out, what's next for you?
My big new book on longevity is a huge baby. That's taking a lot of my time. Right now it's over 1,000 pages long. We'll
Wow.
take some to the cutting room floor, or not to the cutting room floor. I'll just have a website where a lot of the extra material lives for people who want to take a deep dive. That's called Key, is the name of the book, How to Upgrade Your Brain.
When is that coming out?
And optimize your body and live a long time. That's still going to be about 7 months. It's this big, beautiful, over 500 pages, hardcover, like a Costco type of coffee table book. It'll have a $60 price point, so maybe only 100 people are going to buy this thing and read it. But I wanted to write the kind of book that I like to read, and I like to read epic books. So I wanted this to be an epic book. So that's taken up a lot of time. And then kind of behind the scenes, I'm working on a really cool new longevity formula for Kion, based on mitochondrial optimization, hitting some other parameters like telomeres, and so doing that. And aside from that, hanging out with the kids, playing music,
Growing old with your
working on
wife.
my bow hunting game. I've got a 2-week hunt coming up in the Arctic Circle for grizzly
Oh my
and
goodness.
caribou, and so I need to do a lot of training to get ready for that. And I have a big kind of epic spearfishing trip down in Louisiana, so I got to be working on my breath
still
holding
playing
times,
tennis?
my cold tolerance, like once a week. It's funny, my wife plays more than I do, and I introduced her to the sport. So
Can she kick your ass?
Not yet. No, hell no.
She needs to take some more of your
but I'm
supplements.
sure she will. No, my wife doesn't take any supplements.
Really?
No, she'll get a headache or whatever, and I'll say, oh, you need to be on a histamine intolerance. I'll buy her anything, any supplements. Like, she's my wife. I love her. Like, I want her to feel good, but she just she'll go to the garden and she'll make herself a salad, and she'll do some fasting, and she'll listen to her body, and like she's kind of like the complete opposite of me in that sense. She's very, very simple when it comes to taking care of her body, but she's also pretty healthy, so I'm okay with it. It would probably be
your boys?
exhausting if we were both into all these different fancy technologies and supplements. My boys, they've both been genetically tested. They have SNPs for lower than normal BDNF production, so they both take lion's mane before school. They both have lower superoxide dismutase production, so they take glutathione in the evenings. None of us boys have the gene responsible for converting sunlight into 25-hydroxy vitamin D, so we all take vitamin D. So my boys, I'm helping them grow up to be pretty optimized. It's funny, you go into their room, they've got like their own little biomat that they'll read on, and their Juve lights, they do their photobiomodulation, and I rub essential oils into their feet each night. And so they might grow up being kind of weird in that respect, but hopefully very dialed in from a health standpoint.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you're pretty remarkable, I have to say, and I had no idea, just from the just the recent research that I've done on you, I had no idea really the depth of your intellect. First of all, I have to commend you on that, but the depth of your.
I've been drinking a lot of coffee today. So.
Yeah, I just had mine literally right before you came in here. Coffee is my #1 drug of choice.
Good.
But have you, over the course of your self-made career, have you had to face any criticism or challenges along the way that you've had to overcome?
Oh, absolutely. You get called out all the time. Like, for example, there's we were talking about this even before we started the interview today about how biohacking is this big phenomenon, and sometimes I think that it gets a bad rap, and sometimes I eschew that term because sometimes people use that as like a shortcut almost. It's like, well, I'm going to biohack my workout and do my 5-minute workout on a vibration platform with a training mask on. And I just, as an athlete, I kind of snicker at that. And I'm like, no, you can't actually but I get called out on stuff like that. It's like, oh, well, there's Ben Greenfield in his underwear with electrostim attached to his legs, and, how silly. He needs to put in the work, right? And I get that sometimes, but trust me, I work hard.
You get that from other
biohackers,
or you get that from
mostly from like old school strength conditioning guys who are like barbell, chalk, brick gym, boom,
Right.
That's it. So some of these newer technologies, to people who might be close-minded to combining, I think you combine like really simple stoic ancestral living with modern science, and so I get that. I've alluded to my Christianity a couple of times, but I'm also steeped in plant medicine, ayahuasca. I invest a lot in the cannabis industry. I get a lot of flack for that sometimes from people who feel that those might be, whatever you want to call them, like sinful drugs or too hedonistic. And just like my diet is very non-myopic. I'm open to just about anything that grows on God's green earth is something that can be used for a specific purpose, whether it's St. John's wort or psilocybin or marijuana or anything else. So I've caught some flack for that. And then I do get called out a lot as an arrogant, egotistical asshole who thinks he knows it all. And I think
that's not coming across today, by the way.
Well, yeah, I think that's just because I'm prolific. I get out there and I try to talk a lot in a lot of sectors and try to take this knowledge and teach it to people, but I think sometimes it can come across as as arrogant or preachy or something like that. And so, yeah, sometimes I think people might think I'm overly judgmental, or, oh, you got to have everything perfect, your exercise perfect, your nutrition perfect, and your gratitude perfect. And I don't believe that, but I think sometimes because I'm living my life to a certain extent in front of Instagram and Facebook and things like that, and you're projecting that perfect life to people, sometimes people think that they have to do that or they have to be that way. And I feel like I'm droning on, but I do get that sometimes.
So if you can suggest that people make a few incremental changes in their life, what would that be?
So here's what I think just about everybody should be doing to really look, feel, and perform optimally. You need to understand that despite us treating the human body as a sack of chemicals, which is in a large part due to the pharmaceutical industry's influence on medicine. Like, we are chemicals, we can change ourselves chemically by taking an exogenous supplement or medication or food. We're really electrical. Like, the human body is a battery. The cells operate based on a specific electrochemical gradient and voltage across the cell membrane, as do the mitochondria. And so I think the best thing you can do is to keep your body charged, so to speak, from an electrical standpoint. How do you do that? Simple, low-hanging fruit. Every day, get outside in your bare feet, or bear crawling, or climbing a tree, or playing on the rocks. If you can't do that, biohack it. Buy a PEMF machine and sleep on a grounding mat or an earthing mat. Have really, really good. The cells need two things to maintain that gradient: water and minerals. Drink really good, clean, pure water, right, from glass, not plastic. Keep yourself open to the idea of a lot of these new waters, like structured water or deuterium depleted water, or just pure filtered reverse osmosis water. and have a lot of minerals that accompany that, whether it's Celtic sea salt or hypertonic minerals, or or you're making your own Hunza water with different rock salts, but basically high mineral intake. So you're having a lot of salts and a lot of water. You're grounding or you're earthing to keep the human body charged. And then the two other things that are really good for keeping the battery charged is sunlight, so sunlight every day, right, and cold water, like a cold shower. So if you're staying adequately hydrated, lots of minerals, getting in touch with the planet Earth every day, or simulating that, getting in touch with sunlight every day, or simulating that with a biohack like photobiomodulation, and then getting cold every day, or biohacking that with something like cryotherapy, and now I'm giving examples of what I do consider to truly be like useful, useful uses of technology, and perhaps an appropriate use of that term, biohacking. You do those things, and you're going to feel pretty damn good. Like that's pretty low-hanging fruit, right? So earthing, grounding, water, minerals, sunlight, get cold every once in a while, and I think that's gonna move the dial a lot. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you.
Best of luck
Thanks
to
for having
you.
me on.